Hi everyone, my name's Murray Fife and I work on the corporate hypo team as a technical solution professional, and I primarily work with Dynamics 365 for finance and operations. In this presentation, what I want to show is some different things that you can do with Dynamics 365 that extend out beyond the sort of traditional areas that we normally work in. So I'm going to show you how we can take advantage of different technologies, how we can use Office to create better demonstrations or solve different problems. For example, like the signature approval and other things like that, using other partners. I'll show you how we can go out and use bots to create different interactions with the customers. I'll show you how we can create more dynamic Power BI reports very quickly that are a little bit different and a little bit more dynamic than the standard reports. Not to say that those are bad. It's just how you can take advantage of Power BI to do some more clever things and show the full power of it. And then also I'll show how we can go out and do a little bit of coding to do some other functions and sort of be a little bit more clever with the application. So this presentation is not to teach you how to be a great demo person. It's trying to show you some of the out-of-the-box things, outside of the box things that you can take advantage of and just take your demo to the next level if you're trying to wow people. I talked about all the different things that we're going to talk about, but we'll run through these: the Office automation, the reports, the bots and agents, as part of these demos as we move through. Now, the thing to start off with is that it's not, as I said before, it's not the core functions of the Dynamics that are really going to win us the demonstrations. It's going to get us a long way through, but it's not, all the competitors can do similar things that we can do, but we've got this rich fabric of different applications or different tools that we can take advantage of, and our integrations that really allow us to do so much more. So for me, it's the core functions are great, but how we sort of thread everything together, that's where we differentiate ourselves. And again, all of this is just to empower the users, and by allowing the users to see that they can go out and do more, that they can take advantage of different sort of portions of Microsoft, so Office and SharePoint and all of these other tools, then this is really sort of working through the main Microsoft mission statement of really empowering everybody and every person to be more productive. Now, everyone's seen this slide, and a lot of the times we focus here on the center, which is Dynamics 365. For this presentation, we're going to focus on everything around the outside. So all of these other tools that really make us more than just the sum of the operational portions. And this applies not only for me to the operations side, but also applies to the customer engagement, it applies to talent, it applies to retail. Everybody can sort of use these sort of ideas to do better things and sort of wow the customer again, to differentiate ourselves out of the standard pack. And we've seen this slide before where we go out and we talk about Office 365 and Dynamics 365 and LinkedIn, or we talk about Azure. Really, you can change the names at the top. But the idea of this slide is to talk about people think of the pieces of the application in these silos and the ways that you work with them. But that is the news view of the world, or the Microsoft world, or the connected world, is this: that everything is linked together, and we may be melding in Office components along with Dynamics 365 components, along with Azure components, or going to LinkedIn, or all of these other sort of pieces of the application. So we need to change our mindset to have this connected view, because we can do so much more with it. So let's start off, and I've got a handful of demonstrations that I want to go through. But the first one is pretty neat, because what it's going to do is it's going to talk about Office automation. And Office automation is is neat because what we can do is there's capabilities within Dynamics 365 that allows us to create Office documents, but we can then do more with them. So I'll show Dynamics 365, I'll show Word, I'll show Flow, I'll show DocuSign, and also I'll show some delve on how all of this links together. And it really allows us to turn just standard documents into a lot more within the application. So let's look at how I can go out and use Office and use the automation tools and sort of thread together a different way of looking at the system and how we can do things with the documents. So for this example, again, as I mentioned before, what we're trying to show is Office integration, but there's more to Office integration than just saving off to SharePoint. We can automate tools and we can take advantage of other partners that we work with. Now, here I am inside of the sales quotations, and what we have is we've got our quote worksheets. And I went out and I created a new template here for our quotes so that I could make it a little bit nicer than the standard quotes. Now, I can also export this out to Word as well. So if you haven't done this before, then you can create the templates just like you can within Excel and then save them off to a Word document. Now, normally what I do is at this point I download this document and I show it and show the quote, and this is pretty nice by itself. But what we can do is we've got this rich ecosystem of other things that we can use. So we've got OneDrive for Business and SharePoint, which we can link up to Dynamics. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm exporting out to SharePoint. Now, SharePoint has a great capability that it has all these other tools that are built into it. So again, Dynamics is more than just Dynamics itself. It's all of these things that we can link to. Now, with SharePoint, I can save it to a specific location. This is good because we can store documents away on SharePoint. Then also we can access it through Word Online, so we're showing Office 365 online, and all this information is being passed through, which by itself is neat. But what happens is we can do a lot more with this. Now, SharePoint has the ability to integrate with DocuSign. So DocuSign allows us to go out and sign documents and have those documents routed, and you can do that all through DocuSign. But we need to initiate a signing process. So by saving this document away in the specific directory, then I can go out and I can create a flow. And a flow is going to say that whenever a document is dropped into this folder, then I need to have someone sign it. And this could be the CFO, it could be the sales manager, it could be whoever we want. But we're automating this. So this goes out and this triggers the event and sends it to DocuSign, because not only is there a link in SharePoint to DocuSign, but there's a flow action within, or a connector within Flow that allows us to initiate the DocuSign process. So this is going to send it as a template to someone. The neat thing here is that I can now go into Mail, and I'll get notification that a document needs to be signed. This is then going down here. So now I've got a document that's sitting here that requires approval. So I can just click on the review document, and it's going to take me over to DocuSign and allow me to review the documents and sign them directly here. So, but this doesn't have to be someone within the organization. It could be anyone that you want, because you're setting up that template. And then the benefit of this is that there's more, because what we can do is not only can we initiate a signing function, but we can say whenever a document is signed in SharePoint, then go and do something with it. So this is going out and sort of then notifying people within the organization that this document's been signed. And we did all of this just through standard tools. And the only investment that anyone needs to do is to install DocuSign on SharePoint. And then also as a customer, then you just sign up for DocuSign. But if you're automating all of these processes, then it's well worth the money. There's other signing tools as well that you could use that are already built into Flow, and Logic apps that can do exactly the same thing. But I thought this was a really good example because it shows how doing something within Dynamics 365 can then have sort of like a workflow that flows through and then automates other tasks that in the past may have been a little bit difficult, and also gets rid of that extra step where maybe you do have DocuSign and SharePoint, but you don't even have to click that button. It will automatically send that template out. So I thought this was a good example of how you use the document management and use the Office automation to do more than just save documents away. And it really shows the true power of Office 365 and the capabilities that has. Now, the next area that we're going to look at is Power BI. Power BI is one of my most favorite products, or one of my many favorite products. But I love it because we can use it and visualize information in a lot of different ways. But Power BI has different capabilities, and we can really show not only just creating, we don't need to show standard reports, we can create reports, we can create information, we can create views. Also, we've got streaming analytics, which is neat, so we can have IoT information coming through. We can create alerts, we can manage and track different information through Power BI. And by going out and rather than just showing a report, we can show all these sort of different capabilities. Then Power BI and the reporting and even Excel becomes a really important demo tool in order to go out and do more with the system. So let me show you how we can do that. And I'm going to show a number of different examples along the way of how we can possibly use analytics and BI and Excel and all of these things to, again, create a richer environment and do things I don't think a lot of people can do with standard BI tools. So what I'm going to show now is some of the things that you can do with Power BI and reporting. And a lot of these you may already be familiar with, but they're sort of ways that I show a little bit more around the Power BI than I normally do. Now, one of the things that I really like is that you can go out and access the data from an OData feed, or you can query the information in a number of different ways. But we have all of this information, all of these dashboards and reports already available for us within Power BI Online, because we have 18 content packs for production and sales and financials and all of these things, which are already linked up to Dynamics. So there's a feature in here within Power BI Desktop that allows us to connect to a BI service. And all of the information that we've got here, including IoT information, bank balances, and so forth, is available to us. And this allows me to go out and save information up to Power BI Online and then access it, and it's already sort of grabbed all the information and made it available to me. So in this case, something that I like to do is I like to go out and just create a chart or a map. Because I've got all this information in here with customer information, and it just looks nice and sort of impressive. Something that's available now, which wasn't available maybe a couple of months ago or maybe 6 months ago, is that within Power BI, there's all these custom visuals. So developers are going out and building all these really cool views that we can take advantage of. So normally we just show pie charts and bar charts and things like that. But I can go and search, for example, for a heat map. And here's a view, which is a map view, which shows concentrations of heat. Now, what this is doing is looking at all of the different locations, and it runs for a little bit, so I cheated a little bit. And here is that same view already managed within this heat map. So I can create this, and I can create another view. So what I've done is I just copied this, but because I can do this, now I can drill into certain areas. So if I'm looking at the Northeast up in New York and so forth, then I can create another view, and I can maybe make this a little bit smaller. And I could copy that and then do exactly the same thing again, but this time go further down into Forget whether this is New York here, but now I've got more detail showing up. So I have this other view. Now, I can then go out and use some other functions that are out there and choose things like time slices. And there's a view here which is called a time brush, and I like this. Let me pull back there. Because what we can do is we've got these views that we're working with. And if I just add in a time brush and then add in a date, which is the order date, and then add the sales. Try that once more. I'll add in the order date. Then we go out and we see all the information here broken out by date. Now, I don't want to have this as a hierarchy. I just want it as a date. And now we can see all of our sales. Now, if I wanted to, now I can use this time brush function to go out and filter this information out just to different views. Now, I'll go out and show you the finished view that I have here. And in this case, I've got the heat maps with different levels of granularity showing up. Then I've got this time slicer that's showing me different information. Then also I've got this little trend line here that's showing me all of the different products that are being sold as well. So I just built this up. And you can build this version of the Power BI report in like a minute or so. And I think it looks pretty. And you can have a lot of different functions in there as well. But you can just go out and build it and use the standard data that we've got here. So again, it's very easy to use and very easy to create these different views. Now, other things that we can do here is that I've got my Power BI view. And I don't know whether many people know this, but you can actually, if you have this line bar, you can click on any peaks or valleys and you can say, explain why this increased. And it's going to go out and show me a number of different reasons as to why there may be correlations between the other data and this one increase. So it's doing a little bit of machine learning to go out and manage that. Now, also, what I can do is I can go and look at any of the information that we've got here. And I could say I want to view the insights. So this is going out and taking this information that we've got here, using a little bit of AI and machine learning, and then extracting out information that may be pertinent about this view and giving us a whole lot of different reports. So it does sort of like a little bit of this analysis along the way. Also, what we can do is, let me find my production one, is if we have metrics like this, then I could say that I want to create an alert based off this metric and say when the total quantity goes above or below a certain value. So this is really neat because I can have the system tell me when certain thresholds are being met. There's one other thing that we can do here, which is even cooler, because within Flow, there is a connector for Power BI, and whenever these alerts are triggered, then you could send an email or you could send an alert or you could create a transaction or you could create a case in CRM based off this information changing. So this alert function is really neat. One other thing that we can do is that I can look at all this information as a web view, but also I can look at it as it would look on a phone. And we can lay this out and change it for this phone view and see and make it more conducive to look up on the phone. Now, one final thing that I'll show here is that you don't have to just show graphs. You can have pictures showing up as backgrounds on all of this information. So if, for example, in this case, this is showing my production, it's showing me all the speakers being produced, and then I can see my efficiencies. I'm seeing some tiles here with different metrics that are showing on here. And I can rearrange these and put them at different areas so that the production floor shows the metrics that are applied to the individual item. So this is neat because it's a little bit more, it's prettier, And also it gives you a point of reference for the resources and what the metrics are. Now, one final thing that I'll show is that you could go old school, and Excel has some really good graphing capabilities as well. And it has one option which is show the information on a map. But the map doesn't have to be a geographic map. It can just be a picture. So in this case, I've got all this information showing here linked by coordinates, and I can drill into any of this information, scroll around, and I'm doing this on my Surface, so it's all touch enabled. And if, for example, this was a production floor, or if it was a website that you're trying to track the hits on, then being able to sort of create these custom maps and these custom views, I think is pretty darn neat. It takes a little bit of work to get the coordinates set up correctly, but it's another way that you can go out and create sort of like a different view and have all the information from Dynamics 365 coming down into the map function within Excel. So these are a couple of different examples of how you can use Power BI to report off things, and also how you can go even a little bit more old school and use Excel, because it still has some really good capabilities and visualizations that you can take advantage of. Now, the next area that I'm going to look at is something that I like, and it's bots. Bots are hot, and not only are they sort of interesting and they sort of pique people's interest, but they're also a really good way to demonstrate how we can have automated platforms, or this conversation as a platform, to go out and query some information and get information back. And the whole idea of a bot is that you want to make it do a lot of the work, or do as much of the work as it can, before passing all the information over to a customer service rep, or to grab information from different areas. Now, I'll have to warn you, bots require sometimes bots require a little bit of coding. You can create Q&A bots without any coding, but if you want to go out and do a lot more, then you're going to need to get into Visual Studio and use the bot framework. But again, it's an interesting thing, and once you've seen how you do this once, then there's really, it's cookie cutter, and even someone with sort of mediocre programming skills like myself can go out and create a bot and have it talk to the system and pull information back. So in this demo, I'll briefly show you the code. We won't go into it a lot of detail, but we'll show you how all this interacts with the system and how we can use that. So what we're going to show here are some of the capabilities that you've got to take advantage of bots. And I'll show you the Q&A maker first, which allows us to really create simple bots, but they can still be really useful because they can answer a lot of questions. And then I'll show you a little bit of the more advanced bot framework that maybe you need to have a little bit of coding in order to take advantage of, but then you can do so much more. So we'll show you the simple version, then extend that out and show you how that works and sort of why it's important. So a lot of the things with the creation of bots is to offload a lot of the easy questions to something autonomous. And one of the ways that we can do that really easily is through the Q&A maker, or the question and answer maker. This is a service that we offer at Microsoft, which allows you to go out and create knowledge bases of articles or question and answers that then you can sort of deploy out and publish. So all you do is you say, what is the question, and then what is the answer? And customers normally have all this information anyway in a frequently asked question file, or in some knowledge base as well. And what happens is all you do is you just import this, and you can go directly to a website and sort of suck it in. And then what you can do is you can test this out. And in this case, this was a game Q&A. So I could say, what type of game are you? And it's going to get a little bit uppity and say that, well, I can't classify myself as any particular game, but it's gone out and taken the information from the frequently asked questions that we imported in, and then found something that matched closely, or that had the intent that I wanted, and then gave me an answer. But here I can train it and to have different responses along the way. And this is all part of the Q&A system. Now, what you do here is once you have this knowledge base of articles, then you publish it out, and then you can put it into CafeX, and you can have web interfaces for the bot to talk to different systems. And this is pretty neat. So there's no coding that's required here. All you do is sort of deploy it out, and you go to Azure, and then you create the bot itself. Now, for those of you that want to sort of get your hands a little bit dirty, then you can go out and use the bot framework to create something a little bit more intelligent. And what I mean by that is that you can go out and query other systems and get information back. And I've seen people like Barry Schwartz has gone out, and also some other TSPs, and created links to the customer engagement to query information and create cases. But I can also do the same here with operations, because I can just query that information, and I publish this out as a service. And then some of you may have seen me doing this, but I can just go and say, hi, and then it's going to go through a set of steps of what do I want to look for, and I want to look for customers. Now, I can be more advanced, and I could use the LUIS, the language understanding service, to use more literal functions to return back responses. But I can say I want to look at the customers, and I want to look up US 003, and it's going to go to operations, or Dynamics 365 for operations, find that customer, and return the information back to me. Now, this could be used for a customer looking up a product. They could look up price, they could look up availability, they could query it, they could say, I'm looking for this sort of product. It could use the cognitive services to look at an image and find out what the product should be and manage it. Or what you can do is you can publish it out to other services, chat services like Skype, Skype for Business, Teams, Facebook, Messenger, into a web format, and then have the same interaction that I had within my development environment out here inside of this sort of more open framework. Also, you can go out and publish it to Bing, I think, and also you can publish it to Cortana, but that takes a little bit more work to get that through the process to have that published out. So all of these are really just different ways that we can create bots, and this is going to become more and more important as customers are sort of trying to transform and do more online, and also reduce the amount of work that they have to do initially so that they can be more productive in the long term. So this is just a little example of how bots can work. And there's a lot of information online on how you actually build these, and also a lot of tutorials that have been published out at Microsoft to go out and show these as well. For the next demonstration, again, requires a little bit of coding, but it's an important demo tool that seems to be coming, or a question that comes up over and over again. And the question is, how do we integrate with other systems? We can show PowerPoints and we can talk about all of the different tools, but we've got everything that we need to sort of create something that will demonstrate how all of this works. And the tool that we're using to create integration and to make things easier is Azure. And Azure's got a really easy tool, which is the Azure Service Bus, which means you can just send a message to it and then do something with it. Now, again, this portion, for the most part, doesn't require coding, but I'll write a piece of code to simulate sort of like a mainframe or something going out and sending the information. But to create integration, all you need to use is Flow, and you can have all the information flowing through Dynamics into Dynamics 365. So as a demo tool, then this is a really good sort of example, and everyone should be able to show this because, again, there's no real code that you need to write, and it's just using, again, Microsoft technologies. It's using Azure, and it's using Flow or Logic Apps to go out and do that. So let's see how I did that with an example that I created a couple of months ago. In this example, what we're going to do is show just a simple example of how we can illustrate the integration with another system. And in this case, we're going to go out and show how to populate quotes from some external system. And this could be pushing information into operations, or it could be pushing information into sales engagement from some other system. And the good thing that we've got is we've got this mechanism that we can use to transport these requests, which is the Azure Service Bus. And if you're not familiar with the Azure Service Bus, then think of that as just a message queue. It's you send information to it, it stays there until it gets picked up by something, and then they act upon it, then it sort of disappears most of the time. And so what I've got is I've got this quotation, and you can see I've only got 2 quotes here within finance and operations. And then I have the simple program that I created that's mimicking something like a Unix system or an AS400 or something that is pushing the information through. And it's only a few lines of code, but all it's doing is saying, I want to connect to the service bus and pass it through. And most systems can do this. Now, as I mentioned before, it's using this thing which is called the service bus. And I have the service bus configured that allows me to go out and grab the information. So if I look at all my services and then do a search for a bus and the service bus, then you'll see that I've got all of these different things that I can communicate with. And one of them I've got is here. And we can see all the different operations here, but also you can see that there's like this mailbox or this queue called quotations. Now, this is going to track all the information as it comes in, and we're going to see how many messages were created, how many, what the limit was, and we can see all of this running. Now, why this is useful is because we also have this other tool that's called Flow or Logic Apps. And what this allows us to do is this allows us to create a process that will look for that message and then do something with it and then push it through into operations. So these last 2 steps create the header and the lines. So if we want to see this in action, then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do the old school interface. It's cranking through, sending this through a modem, and it created a record for me. And then I can close that down. So if I catch this fast enough, then we should see that the message came through here. And there's one message. So that one piece of information come through. This could be one message. This could be 1,000 messages or 1,000,000 messages. It's just going to sit there and queue up. And then within Flow, then this is running. And then we can see that this is now, it's grabbed all the information, and I wasn't fast enough. It's parsed out the information. It's created the quote header. So it was coming from Oracle, and it was quote number 8. And then for this customer and customer account, and also created the lines for me. So now if I go back to Dynamics and refresh this, then now I have a new quote that's been added for Contoso Los Angeles for a Surface Pro, and I'm ordering 10 of these. So all this information came from some other system, pushing its way through and using, again, all Microsoft tools. All we're doing is just opening up the ability for people to communicate with this queue and then send it down. Now, there's a lot of other different ways that you can do this, but I like the service bus because it's visible and you can queue up a lot of information and send it through, and then just use Flow and use the standard connectors to create whatever data you want. So this is this was something that we created because we needed a way to actually show how things can get integrated and how all this information flows, and I think it's a pretty good example. Next demonstration that I'm going to show is talking about Azure services. Sometimes this may be a little bit hard to set up, but we've got this really great tool that's called Flow, Microsoft Flow, that allows us to go out and automate tasks. The problem is that sometimes you have other systems that you want to grab information from, or maybe you want to create custom rules or custom integrations that do different things. Now, Azure has a capability that you can go out and create these things called Azure Functions, and then you publish them to Flow so that you can use them. So if you wanted to create random data, if you wanted to go out and periodically check another system and grab it, then these functions give you this capability. For those of you faint of heart on programming, then this may be a little bit too much, but we all know someone within Microsoft that could probably write a function and help us along the way. So keep in mind what I can show here is really important, because we can do a lot of different things, and we can do even cleverer things than we could have possibly thought of without these Azure Functions and Flow. So let me dive into this one example, and I'll show you how that works. This example is talking about Azure Functions, and this is going to start looking very programmy, and there's a reason for it. Then, because what we're able to do within Azure is create these serverless programs that we can call. And now this is really important, because there's a lot of times where we may want to create some code that does something and then make it available to the other systems, including operations or Flow and everything else. But in the past, you'd have to go and put it on some server and host it somewhere, but Azure gives us this capability to sort of put these rules up in the cloud so that we don't have to worry about it. And all we do is just run it there, and then whenever we need to call it, then we can just run it. This is even more useful, because sometimes you get information from finance and operations or from some external location like Twitter, and you want to parse out some information. And again, this is coding. There's no getting around this. But you can manipulate the information. You can do a lot more with the code, or if you have a coder, then they can help you sort of create things. There was an example of this. I was working with another colleague of mine, Don Lees, and what he wanted to do is look at a MSDS label and have it work out what it is, and then find the information about it, but on the web. But then he needed to get one key piece of information out of that website that he could then use later on elsewhere in his flow. And that's really hard to do programming within operations, or finance and operations. And it's still a little bit of work to do within customer engagement. But what we can do is we can use things like Flow to go out and do this and then manipulate the information. But this example that I have here is a little bit simpler, because what I wanted to do is I wanted to illustrate this and create a program that just creates a random number. In hindsight, this was a little bit of a waste of time, because there's a random number function in Flow, which I'm going to show, but that's beside the point. And then use this within a Flow to do something else. And this is just a simple program. All it does is create a random number, and it publishes it out to this function, or this publicly available function or secured function, depending on how you want to do it. Now, the thing that you can do within Flow is I can go out and I can create custom connectors. Custom connectors can call these functions and then take in information and then push information out. So I've got a custom function here to go out and look up the weather. So I can use this within Flow to look up the weather in Redmond or in Atlanta or wherever I want. I've also got my dice roller, which is the function that I had, that goes out and calls that function up in Azure and does whatever I want to it, and it manipulates it within the system. So then what I can do is I can create a flow here which uses this to do things. Now, say for example, I wanted to just create a simple flow that maybe whenever I wanted to, say within Dynamics, and we'll use our CRM for now, then whenever a record gets created, then maybe I want to randomly audit it. So I'm going to say that whenever I create a new customer record or a new account within the application, then random, so roll a dice, and then if it's greater than 15, then go out and do something. So again, it's just going out and finding this. And for me, I renamed my accounts to be customers. So I'm saying whenever a new customer gets created, then I can use flow to, I think I can just do dice, use my handy dandy dice roller, roll a dice, and then what I can say is I can add a step and add a condition and say if the value of the dice is greater than, let me hide this, come on, and say if it's greater than 15, then maybe I go out and I send an email to someone to say that they need to audit this. So I'm just going out and creating an email. Screen's a little bit here. Send an email. And then I could send this to ME5. And then, so it's selecting this and say approved, required. So what I've done here is I did something which is pretty neat and a little bit contrived, where I'm going and I've got this dice roller that's going and passing through this information and rolling the dice and then giving me all the information back. So, but this could be a lot more complicated. It could be going out and looking up other systems, other applications that you've got. It could be compiling information. It could be going out and doing credit checks on the customer. And once you have this function, then it can do all of these things sort of by itself. So this is the Azure Functions, and then using them as flows allow you to go out and extend out further than just Microsoft and just the Dynamics 365, but still keep on using the architecture and the tools that we've got here within Azure and within Office to automate all of these functions. So this is sort of extending out and doing a little bit more legwork to create these, but I think it's very satisfying when you do create a really cool flow that's going out and sort of aggregating and doing neat things that normally you wouldn't be able to do. Now the final demonstration that we'll talk about today is talking about IoT, but we'll talk about how we can change how people sort of work with the Internet of Things. Now, there's a lot of examples that we have where we're going out and gathering information from different devices. And this is part of what we do with the field service. But what we can do is we can do some different things where we can, if we want to have some fun with the customers, then we could have IoT feedback. And we can create devices that flash lights, we can create other sort of things. And with Dynamics 365 and Flow, then there are a lot of different capabilities for us. Now, in this example, we think about all of the different sort of IoT things. And there's things out there that we can show different examples of this. So this could be showing lights on water pipes. It could be tracking the different speeds of cars and all of these other things which are IoT. So we're just tracking this information. We can do this easily within the system. Or at least we can build some things and have this information being feeding back. But the other thing is that we can also with all these devices, we can push information back to them. So we could show information on screens. And a really cool example that I'll talk about is I've got, and this is the last presentation, is that I've got this device here and it's called a Pavlok. And the thing that it does is it goes out and it flashes. It can go red or green or yellow. It could vibrate. It can beep. And also it can shock people. And you can manage this remotely within the application. And there's for this, again, use this sparingly or wisely, but we can use things like flow to initiate events. So again, if we wanted to alert people, then having sort of these devices, or even having cell phones or having other things that are connected, are great sort of tools. So in this final demonstration, I'll show you something that I did, which sort of shows some other capabilities or some other things that maybe you could do within your demonstration. This is going to go out and create a function within Azure that then talks to this device, and then you can send messages to it, and we can do that through Flow. It's really pretty simple, but it's sort of like a fun example of how we can manage this. So let's take a look at how you take things sort of to the next level and have a little bit of fun with the demonstrations and create something that's a little bit more tactile to some poor individual. So let's look at that. For this demonstration, I had another example of how you can use function apps. But this example does go out and does extend out to other applications and something different from Dynamics. So rather than pulling in information and querying information, using it as a data source, what I'm doing here is I've got my Pavlok device that is almost like an IoT device, but I can send messages to it within through a developer framework. So I can tell it to do whatever I want. I can tell it what stimulus I want to pass through to it. I can tell it what I want to do with it and how strong the stimulus and all these other things. Now, if this was a IoT device like a temperature sensor or thermometer, then this could be sending a reset to the device or whatever we want. But this is a different type of Azure function because what we're going to do is we're going to send information out. And you work with this exactly the same way as I did in an earlier example with the rolling of the dice. Because what I do is I create this custom connector that is calling through to this Azure function. And what this does is it's got all of what I can do is I can just register this, and then it becomes a connector that I can use. So if, for example, I look at my flows, then I can use Flow to trigger a call to this external device. And what I'm doing here is if I edit this, it's really simple. All I say is I've got a manual trigger that I'm pushing a button. And then I can say for the device, what do I want to do? I could say I just want the LED to flash and I want intensity 1, and I could have a message coming through, and here's my access token and code that I use to authenticate and make sure that I can access this. So this gives us the additional capabilities to go out and create more advanced flows. Now, in this example, I've got a flow that allows it to manually trigger, or what I can do is I think I've got another one down here, which I call Pavlok Roulette. And what this does is this has a random number from 1 to 5 that then goes out and does 6 different functions on the Pavlok device. But this is an example of where we could have conditions based on something happening within Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations, or within customer engagement, or even things coming in like tweets or anything like that, going out and communicating back to the device. Now, I wanted to demonstrate this on screen, but no one in the production group would actually wanted to try this. So you'll have to just imagine how this works in the real world, and we'll leave it at that. So I've shown you a number of different demonstration options that you've got that are allowing us to go out and extend out a little bit more from just the core applications. I've shown you how we can use Office, how we can use Power BI a little bit more, how we can create different types of charts, also how we can even go further and use additional tools like Flow to make things a little bit more real and create sort of more dynamic demonstrations. So I hope this was useful, and that this is going to help you all with your demonstrations, and maybe one or two of these things you'll implement in your demonstrations. And thank you very much for watching this presentation.